I'm Jim Collison, live from the Gallup studios here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Theme Thursday, Season 3, recorded on August 31st, 2017. Theme Thursday is a Gallup webcast series that dives deep into the CliftonStrengths themes, one theme at a time, and today's theme is Relator. If you have questions, comments, or contributions during this webcast, we do have a live chat room that's available for you right below the main video window. If you just look right down there, chat room available. You don't even need to create an account. To log in, choose the login button, bottom left-hand corner. Choose the guest account, take the guest name out. Put your name in, take those numbers out, those little pesky numbers there. Put your name in, hit submit, and you're in the chat room. We'll take live questions from you during the program. If you're listening to the recorded version or you have questions about custom strengths coaching solutions, you can send us an email as well, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strength Center, just gallupstrengthcenter.com, for all your CliftonStrengths coaching resources and training needs. By the way, that Gallup Strength Center is getting a facelift as of September 15th, 2017. So if you just mark that on your calendar, come out and take a peek and look at us. And to be honest with you, Gallup.com is changing as well. So if you'd like to see lots of big changes coming in with our stuff here as of September 15th, circle that date on your calendar. We'd love to have you come out and get your feedback on that as well. Maika Leibbrandt is our host today. Maika works as a workplace consultant here at Gallup in the brand new location where internet is fantastic. Maika, welcome to another Theme Thursday.
You're welcome, Jim. The internet is so much better. That's really why we moved. An entire state away was just for you.
Well, you just got sick of me saying, Maika, can you do something about your internet? If you go back and look at the videos, it's not great, but it's great now.
Every time you mentioned the word bandwidth, it was like a curse word. I just knew it was boiling up from inside of you. That's painful. Not why we moved, but I would have done that for you.
It was painful for me. What's not painful is Relator. Maika, we're going to dig into that. Let's spend a little bit of time. If you haven't downloaded the companion guide, now would be a great time to go out and grab that, and let's get started.
Excellent. So Relator is a fantastic theme. I don't have it. It's number 25 for me, but we get to hear from an awesome guest today, all the way from Manila in the Philippines. Ryan Salvanera is going to be with us in a moment. Before we hear from Ryan, I'd like to just give you a quick overview of Relator. Follow along with that companion guide. I promise you'll find it useful. The first thing you're going to find on that companion guide, and by the way, Relator is right now, I think, our last of our relationship building themes. We might have a couple to come back to catch up, but it's really going to round out that idea of the relationship building themes as they relate to the strengths-based leadership domains. The first thing you'll find on that companion guide is the long definition of Relator, and just a few pieces I want to pull out when we talk about Relator. It is that theme that's about having a close inner circle of people. I think it's probably pretty misunderstood because people see the term Relator and instantly think, oh, I must just be relating all over the place, super relatable. It's not necessarily that. Really, Relator is about a selectivity, a depth of relationship, a connection with other people that is more about longevity and real genuine sincerity, looking at how do we have really a great inner circle that we can cultivate deeper relationships with and that also give us a lot of energy. A few of the key phrases in that long definition: your Relator theme pulls you toward people you already know. You are comfortable with intimacy. You encourage a deepening of the relationship. For you, a relationship has value only if it is genuine. You'll hear a lot of those words like genuine, authentic, sincere. These are your steps toward real friendship, is risking with other people, going to places that others might find too deep or might find even a place of vulnerability. You tend to be comfortable with that. I actually pulled out that phrase, you're comfortable with intimacy. And I've been thinking about this in preparation for Relator this week. It's a pretty bold statement to make. I have some of my best friends have high Relator. I'm married to a Relator. And I think that it is one of the most attractive things about Relators is that comfort with really going there, being real and honest and raw with other people. You're not going to do it with everybody. If you've got high Relator, you're not going to walk into a room and say, hey, let's all be vulnerable. It is more about having those quiet moments with the people who you truly trust, who trust you in return, and having those, being bold enough to take the risk to go there with those folks who you're closest to is really what strengthens those relationships. I often think that people with Relator can even see deeper levels of relationships maybe than other people can. or maybe than other people do. I would compare that to a theme like futuristic, where with futuristic, you're noticing potential in the future that other people might never think of. Think about Relator on that same token. You are seeing levels of intimacy, levels of closeness, levels of friendship. You can imagine them being there. You can go there with comfort, whereas other people may never even realize that that option was out there. And so you willingly take those steps with the people who you're closest to. If you're a leader with Relator, let's talk about what that might look like. I think what it is it's enhancing the depth of understanding within a team. Think about that as an individual contributor. If your Relator gives you that lens on how genuine a relationship can be, how much deeper, how much closer a relationship can be, imagine then the effect that that can have on a group of people who you lead. It probably shows up, or it could show up as a willingness to go beyond some of those surface triggers or those surface understandings of people. Great managers, great leaders really do need to know what excites people, what makes them take action, what motivates them. I think leaders with Relator can go beyond that initial response to those questions, and they can really say, what excites you in hard situations, or what motivates you even when all the chips are down. And they're not going to stop at just that initial response, but they really are going to study that relationship, study that person. What does intimacy look like in a business context? Well, it probably is something that might take a little bit more time, but could yield very productive partnerships. Valuing the longevity of a relationship is something that could open you up to more opportunities for riskier feedback. Imagine what that would look like if you had a great partnership with other business leaders in your community or other clients. Think about being a leader in an organization who's got a really close relationship with somebody that they serve. The ability to get real-time feedback that maybe people wouldn't be brave enough to be open enough to give you otherwise. You value genuine discoveries with those people closest to you. You value hard work with the people closest to you. So you could also extend your skill set through relationships. Study the diversity of your inner circle. Be curious about who is it that you're letting in, and how could you go even deeper with a more diverse inner circle there. And I'm not saying a bigger inner circle, but how do you get to know the people who are already your closest friends? Because again, Relator is not includer. Relator is not individualization. Relator is not about, let me go out and collect more people to advise me, but how can you study the relationships that are already there? And again, take them further than maybe you would have otherwise thought about. So consider building your own personal board of directors. Not an original idea I had. This is something that comes from years of varsity management and our education training here at Gallup. This idea of having a personal board of directors, people who you trust to help you think about the direction that you're taking in your life. Think about cultivating those relationships on an even deeper level with people who bring different talents, different skills, different expertise to enhance the good, not just of your organization, but the good of the whole. You might not have the patience for glossy generalizations where emotions are concerned. You're probably not going to be okay with just asking somebody, hey, how are you doing? And them saying fine, if that's somebody within your inner circle. So don't force yourself to have patience with that. Set yourself up for relationships where you've got the time and the trust to really talk about how people are doing. You're likely not hiding your frustration with that sort of glossy generalization very well. So it's okay to raise your hand in situations where you feel safer, where you can go deeper. You don't have to force yourself to be great at small talk if you're not. Create safety by expressing how you feel about ideas or initiatives, whether that's good or bad. Again, relators might take a little bit more time to warm up to those kinds of conversations. But even if you're communicating with people outside your inner circle, and let's be honest, if you're a relator, most people in the world are outside your inner circle. I think you can still offer some of that relator talent to people you lead, to people you affect. Your people are going to be attracted to you because of that relator talent, because of the kind of, I think, authenticity that it brings, the kind of realness that it brings. You can practice that without committing to being somebody's best friend. You can do that by expressing how you feel. Spend time with those closest to you. This is a theme that needs that in order to thrive. It's not just that you're great with people around you, it's that you get better when you spend time there. Also think about expressing your long-term relationship goals. If you are mentoring somebody who you believe in, that you know you're going to stay in touch with for a long time, say it out loud. That's one of the best gifts that a relator can give to somebody, is that understanding of, hey, I see us being able to rely on each other, being able to have a friendship or a partnership together for a long time. And that might be something that you think other people know instinctively, but it's always good, I think, to say that out loud. Now let's talk about those 4 needs of followers. A leader might use the relator theme to build trust. One second. Sorry, excuse me. A leader might use the relator theme to build trust by intentionally seeking out those you're closest to and asking for their input, asking for their advice, asking for their perspective. Encourage this among other people. Oftentimes, I coach people with relator who struggle because all of a sudden they'll find themselves in a leadership position and they feel like they have to have those close relationships with everybody who counts on them. I think perhaps a more true angle toward that relator is to be able to encourage close relationships among other people. Think about celebrating times when people are working together really well. Think about how you're setting up opportunities for people to cultivate friendships outside of just with you. You don't have to be the best friend to everybody. You can be the broker of great relationships as well. And I think that's a way that you can create a following of trust behind you, is by expressing the importance that you see in relationships. You could think about building stability with relator by revisiting your inner circle of friends. Create some togetherness moments for everybody. Think about that stability that you feel when you're with your closest advisors or your closest friends, and think about encouraging other people to do the same. A leader with relator might show compassion by listening for raw reaction, listening for emotion. And again, you don't have to shoulder the burden. You don't have to let everybody into your circle, but give people a chance to share it. They're going to want to, especially with you. The more they learn about your relator, the more they learn about the importance that you put on relationships. You don't have to own all of that just by giving somebody a chance to share it. And we'll hear from Ryan in a moment about how you can be a great coach and a great listener without having to shoulder all of the ownership of those emotions. And finally, a great leader might use relator to inspire hope by expressing the personal stories of what a better future looks like. Share your own story of hope. Own what you've got in your past. Think about close relationships and how far that they have come. You probably have that unique lens on how the future can be brighter by asking yourself how your relationships have gotten better. So think about studying that and really putting it into a narrative form. Anytime you're talking about change, anytime you're talking about direction of where your team or your organization needs to go, make sure you add a little bit of a flavor of how those personal aspects and the personal perspectives are going to be improved with that change. I'm not so sure that was a short Maika version, but it was the introduction here to Relator. And at this point, I hope that gave you some good food for thought to fall in love with this theme as it relates to leadership. Now, the best part of my job is I get to introduce you to a really great leader who leads with Relator. Coach Ryan Salvanera is with us all the way from Manila in the Philippines. Ryan, welcome to the program.
Hey, Maika, thanks for having me here.
Ryan, can you just tell us first, what are your top 5 and what is it you do?
Sure. My top 5 is Relator, Arranger, Learner, Maximizer, and Individualization. So right now, I'm actually on the journey to becoming a full-time coach. I just started that about a year ago. I left my work as a manager, leader from the technology industry. So for about a year now, I've been doing this full-time. Both as a coach and a trainer. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Excellent. How does Relator show up in your life?
In all aspects, I have to say. For work, it's always been there, I suppose. So, in how I develop my relationships as a leader. A lot of times my colleagues would find one-on-ones a burden, but for me, I just love it. I would have one-on-ones with my team members once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks. And I just love getting to know my team members. So that's how it has shown up.
Excellent. So can you tell me a little bit, think about a time maybe when your relator has benefited somebody else?
Yeah, sure. I think it happens a lot with my team members when, when they know that someone's listening and they're able to just share things even beyond work, right? And that makes work so much easier, the flow of work so much better for all of us. I had a team member who was always very quiet and doesn't really open up, but with my one-on-ones with her, she started to open up more, and I got to know her life more and understand her situation better. So that kind of by having that relationship with her, that really allowed us to work better. So I could know what was the issues well beyond just just from the office.
Why was it so important to you to know what was going on beyond the office?
That's probably, for me, that's my relator kicking in now. Looking back at it, um, it's just natural for me to try to get to know that. At first, I thought it was a leadership style, because back then I didn't know I had relator. So I just thought, hey, no, this is a good leadership style for me to get to know people. I later on realized it's not natural for everybody, but it was just something that was natural for me to do. Yeah.
Can you think of times later when you followed up and having that knowledge of what her life was like outside the office where that was a benefit?
Yeah, sure. When there were hmm, now I'm thinking if I share, but that's fine. It's a story to tell.
Okay.
So, she had some health issues, and she encountered some problems with it. But because I knew what was going on in her life, I was not as I was more, I guess, not lenient, but I was more understanding to what she was going through. I suppose that goes with my relator and my individualization here, because my individualization tells me, hey, you got to know this person. I think this is the best way to treat her in given all her situation now. So I guess as a sample also of how my relator and my individualization has been working hand in hand
It does sound
pretty
like
well for me.
a great dynamic there, being able to, and I even probably imagine that individualization serves your relator. Here's how I'm going to connect with this person, or here's how I'm going to deepen that relationship.
Right, it does. It does that a lot. Whenever I'm in that one-on-one situation, I would like to think my individualization kicks in and tells me, okay, this is how maybe you try to approach this person. Because some are more open, but others do tend to be closer and closed and not really allow you to come into their lives. And my individualization does help me try to figure out if I can get in, or just do another strategy instead.
Do you find that you want to be let in to most people's lives, or are you more selective about that side of things? Do you feel like you have a capacity to have close relationships with all those people?
Yeah, that's the funny thing about my relator. This was something actually I discovered when I first attended a coaching course, because the trainer asked about me being selective, and my relator is not that selective. Meaning I do try to get in. I think it might be also because of my includer, which is in my top 10. But so I would like to think I have more circles than the regular relator. But just as a regular relator, it is really tough for me to break the ice. That's like you said, we don't come in wanting to build relationships, but once I make an initial contact, I do tend to really want to get in.
That's excellent. And what I think a great self-awareness thinking about the dynamics of those other themes with your individualization, that curiosity about people that's very open. And then the includer also, the make the circle wider piece, but driven by relator, which is, once we're in, we can go deep, but maybe getting in is a little bit more of a challenge.
Yes, yes. I mean, the funny thing was it always it was always weird for everybody else whenever I'd say that I'm shy, because they all tell me, no, you talk a lot, you talk to everybody, but that's because I've already built those circles, right? But then when I found out about the relator, I understood myself better and go, that's why that's why I thought I was shy, because I could never break the ice. I could never start off that conversation. But once I'm in, that's where, I just open up, they open up, and they totally forget how shy I was at the start, and they could never understand why I would say I was shy. So that's the thing there.
Sure. Gosh, that makes sense. And I'm seeing in the chat room that really resonated with a lot of people. If you're watching it, Ryan, there's about 7 Me Toos right now about that piece, feeling like, yeah, I would say I'm shy too. Excellent. So now that you have Relator, maybe think back to when you first discovered that piece. Is there anything you do differently, or anything you're more intentional about knowing that you've got Relator?
Yeah, well, when I first noticed Relator, the Relator has always been there for me. I realized it when I started to really learn about it, because even back in high school, even middle school, I would suppose you'd call that in the US, it was always easy for people to open up, right? But I always kind of punished myself for not being able to approach more people, right? It was always something like, I questioned my self-confidence. And so nowadays, I've just become more intentional in telling myself, no, Ryan, this is natural. This is okay. It's okay to have that, to not be able to easily approach people. That's fine. That's really not your style, right? And just get somebody else to introduce me, or find ways to be introduced. So that's something that I've been more intentional about, knowing that, hey, this is just naturally how I do things. Another thing that I've started to be more intentional with is try to use technology to my advantage. Jim might know this. I'd start commenting on the Facebook and all those, because there's no face-to-face, right? And so by the time that I do get to talk to them, it seems like I've broken the ice and my relator is already kicking in. So that's kind of how I would call it my relator hack, if you may. That's kind of what I've started to do.
Yeah, Ryan, let me comment on that, because I do think for relators, especially if they don't have those other influencing themes that help. Woo, we'll talk about this here in a little bit, but Woo is one of those where you can get some help from it to help break the ice. Depending on, where is Woo for you, Ryan? How do you know where it sits for you?
It's somewhere in the high 20s.
Okay, so it's down there a ways, but that works well for me. But you mentioned technology, and we have a great way. Or those folks who struggle with that can first make those contacts, like you said, make those online. I just came back from Podcast Movement, and I met about 50 people that I only knew online. Now, that's not a struggle for me, but I could see how in your business or in what you do, you have any great stories where you've met someone first, and then that allowed you to kind of take advantage of breaking the ice first, and then Relator kicks in?
You mean like online first?
Yeah, or whatever. I mean, think about being able to use technology, or being able to use that first to kind of break the ice. Any really great examples in what you do that kind of that highlights that?
Oh yeah. I mean, there was somebody actually on the Gallup called the coach. It was more than probably a year ago, and she was looking for somebody to talk to about a project that she was doing, and I just chimed in there like, hey, sure. And then we just started chatting. And then when we did a video call, it was so much easier, right? I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I didn't get to meet her personally, but the video chat itself was so natural for me and so easy for me. It doesn't come naturally for me for first meetings, at least.
Ryan, do you feel like with Relator, like, so you just mentioned this phrase that really kind of stuck with me in the sense that you never got to meet them personally. And you feel like with Relator, you have to? I mean, I don't think that's something like you can have a deep bond, a deep relationship, and it can be done. In the old days, it would be letters, and today it would be email, phone calls, video conference. Do you feel like that can work even though you've never really met in person?
Yeah. For me, at least, it does work, right? For me, it's really in the conversations that we have, right? Even though we were talking about something very specific, a project, the conversations tend to just include more things there. That's how I kind of do it.
Yeah, and I think you can even bridge or sense a closeness with someone across a distance. So, a lot of kind of people think, we have this question in the Gallup Q12 survey, do I have a best friend at work? And it gets that question gets a ton of traffic and a lot of questions about that. But I think one of those superpowers of Relator and is a manager is the ability to know and understand and care about someone from a distance. That is really hard to do in our workplace. And in the gig economy, we're seeing more and more of that going on. I think probably you're in your own practice, you're in coaching practice too. People are thinking about, how can I create these relationships and keep them close and consistent and all those things. And I think Relators have the ability to do that over distance. Do you are you currently coaching anybody that you're not meeting with that personally, where it's only done via video or only done via audio?
It's just started now, so it's not really something that I would say I've established a relationship already, but definitely that's something that I think can be done, right? It's just natural for me. I don't know, again, if this is Relator, this is my past, but it's just natural for me to, like you said, generally care about that person, whoever it is that I've started to develop that relationship with. So even if it's just remotely, a remote conversation, I do invest a lot in it, in that relationship already. That's how I see it.
I like the idea of just being able to see a lot more runway in a relationship with Relator, knowing that this is something that will take an investment and a willingness to make that kind of investment.
Yeah, I mean, that you get these advice that, you shouldn't, you should be careful, not really open yourself up. But that just doesn't go well with you, doesn't sit well with me. For me, it's more of, hey, you already have that friendship and we already have that relationship. Go ahead, deepen that, Ryan. If it turns out that the person is not as genuine as he may seem, that's fine. That's his loss. That's kind of how I see it, right? So I see that as I invest in it. If they don't give it back, okay, it has happened. It will happen, I'm pretty sure. But I think for me, it's a good way to feed my Relator still, to be able to find out how to develop relationships.
Yeah. So Ryan, I'm curious what the experience has been like for you going from a role as a manager to striking out on your own and building a coaching business. Can you just tell us how that's been going?
Oh, well, it's been a fun journey, I have to say, because with Relator, that's a struggle, right? How do I break all these ice and really get clients? But one thing I've realized is, and before I didn't want to take in people I knew. I didn't want to coach people I knew because somehow, I don't know, there was just something about it that I didn't like. There are people telling you not to do that. But I realized that these are people who actually already trust me, already have confidence in me. So I started just coaching some people that I've already known anyway, and they've already trusted me. So that's been the realization that I have also. It's just, hey, the Relator has worked. why do I stop that, right? I genuinely care for them. I guess the only part that I personally kind of find, let's say, you might say, icky, is that I start charging them when in fact it was really genuine at the start, right? So that when I started, I was like, do I really want to do this? But in the end, they were actually willing to go on that journey with me. So why not? I took that as a sign that they really trusted me. They really had, that confidence in me.
That's really interesting when you're thinking about how do I typically set up my own business. It seems like I need to go out and win over a bunch of strangers. I need to build a giant client base or sell my idea or my service to a bunch of people I don't know. Whereas what you're describing is just looking at what works for you and saying, no, if these relationships have worked because of my relator, then let's start building on the strongest foundation I have, which is those close people, which might be different from what you think of when you think about starting a business, but it's certainly more personalized to you.
Yep, definitely. And from that, eventually there are referrals, and that's a lot easier because they actually introduce you. So the ice is still kind of there, but it's been chipped up a bit. So it makes it easier for me. So
maybe the ice just isn't as cold. It's still there, but it's not as frigid if you're there with a close friend.
Right.
Ryan, I think that's a really good business point you just made there. Even from a leadership point, when we think about sales and we think about someone as at high relator, maybe high individualization in those circles where they're going to struggle a little bit for that sales funnel, so to speak. And I think you just hit the nail on the head, and that is partnering with someone who can do that, like having that might be a great virtual assistant or somebody who can go out and just crunch those calls for you. Or like you said, customer referrals are super important. So I think the value of that. So do you ask your customers, those you're coaching, do you go and ask, hey, do you know anybody, or do you just kind of rely on them in word of mouth? How do you do that?
Oh, I've started asking. Before, I used to be pretty laid back about it or very, very hesitant about it. But I realized there's no problem in it, because when I did not before, some would actually ask me, hey, do you mind if I refer you? So I was like, yeah, why not? Why don't I ask that instead, right? It's okay. If they say no, that's fine. I think the rejection part was the one that kind of made me hesitant before. Again, it's just an understanding that these people, especially the ones who started asking that if they could refer me, they do trust me. So okay, let's just ask. And yeah, so that's helped.
Yeah, and I think there's a varying amount of, this is going to be, your mileage might vary depending on who you are and the other themes around you. For some people, that asking may even be really, really difficult to be able to do. And I think you've got to find those ways to break that ice, or find those methods or those workflows that you're very, very comfortable in. So for Ryan, for you, yeah, you mentioned rejection in there, and that is tough. Like I think Relator takes rejection very, very differently than Woo takes rejection.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so I think understanding that about yourself in creating these relationships, I think is really, really important when it comes to this. And it just doesn't have to be in a sales cycle, right? Sales is just one element of influence. As a manager, there's things we've got to get people to do, and we have to sell them on it, right? They have to be able to say yes to it. And so I think as we have to kind of think through those themes and say, okay, I'm high in Relator, I'm great at building these relationships or building the team relationships, but when I have to influence and move these groups forward, how do I build on those relationships that I've built and then use those other themes or whatever to get people moving forward? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, how do you think?
I want to go back
go ahead,
a
Mike.
little bit more to that Relator. How does Relator take rejection? Jim, could you just say a little bit more about what you mean with how does Relator versus Woo take rejection? Maybe how would they even define it?
Yeah, well, I think, for Woo and the influencing, I think okay, speaking in generalities too, we have less invested oftentimes in the relationship itself, right? I always love that song Deep and Wide, and I always say woo is kind of wide and relator's kind of deep, and that's a big broad generalization, but that's kind of how I see those two working. And so I'm not saying it doesn't hurt for a woo. That can, right? If you're influencing in that way to get rejected, it's not painless. But I think oftentimes as woo, we'll move on more quickly, or we can, we take it just a little bit differently. We don't remember it as long. That may be some possibilities there. Where with relator, because those relationships are emotionally tied, they're a little bit deeper. They can be of more significance. When we see that rejection moment, you're working with somebody for a long time and say, hey, I'd love to, would you recommend me? And they say no. I think emotionally that's a little bit harder for a relator than it would be for a woo. I don't know, Maika, respond to that.
I just wonder if there's more permanence with relator than there is with woo. It's like playing with clay that you're going to bake versus Play-Doh that you're going to reform.
Yeah.
With woo, I expect to be rejected about 100 times a day because I'm going to offer up myself about 1,000 times a day. Whereas with relator, maybe I'm not quite as quick to even offer up myself or my friendship or my services.
Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I mean, I think with relator, because of the investment in time, investment in also that emotion there. If you do get rejected, you might feel that that's something that says about your relationship, when in fact it should not, right? There could be so many other reasons. But yeah, I guess that's how I took it when Jim said it. We might take that, I guess, harder. I'd say I do. I don't know about other the woos how they take it, but I definitely know that I really take rejection pretty badly. It's something that it still stings a lot when I get it, but it's something that I've also told myself that, hey, just do it, right? And that's also right how we manage these things also, right? Just do it and see what happens.
Yeah, there's a great statement in the chat room from LaShawn. She says that relator's number one, and my other themes help me with rejection and moving things forward. And I think that's a great statement, right? We make these generalizations about these themes, and then there's other things around it that make us all unique and different. And so there's no one way it's handled. But I love the way she looks at that and says, there's some other things that'll help me with that rejection. It may not sting. For me, I have woo 2 and relator 8, 9, something in there. And so it stings. It does sting because I do care about what people think about me, and I do have deep relationships with people. But it doesn't sting as long, maybe for some others, because of some other, I'm moving on. And so this is Maika, and this is an area, we deal with this a lot on Theme Thursday. In that this is really an exercise as you listen to what we talk about, as we listen to even Ryan's experience. Everyone needs to internalize this for themselves, right? Don't take these general statements, try to apply them yourself. Let's work on who are you and how do these things come together and what does it mean for you? So I just want to encourage that. We've done a lot of these, Maika, and we get a lot of great feedback in the chat room, but it's really about your struggle. I mean, you, the listener, it's really about your struggle and how you work with it.
Absolutely. And the idea, what I love most about strengths is that yours is going to be different from everybody else's. I'm curious, maybe this is a great next chapter on the rejection topic. Leela in the chat asks about trust. Ryan, can you talk about how do you build trust with relator and maybe what happens when that trust is broken?
Oh, okay. So, I mean, the trust factor, it's really, I think it comes about naturally because it's for me when I open up, right? People tend to open up as well. That's really how I see people trusting me more. Just because when I tell them stories, I give them insight into my life, they do feel like they're inside and that I am trusting them with my story, and that naturally they come back and also give that trust to me. So that's really how I do it. Yeah, how I would like to think I do it. Let's just put it that way.
I like that relator answer. It's just you're just wearing your emotions on your sleeve there. How do I get people open up? I do it to them.
Yeah, it's just so natural for me. I actually have a story about that, like how I've instantly just open up things. A lot of my friends before, back in uni, they take me to on their dates, right? Why would they do
With
that?
them?
With them? Well, not the first day. I'd be the third wheel mostly. And what they do is they'd introduce me, because then once I'm opened up, I'd be like talking and really be able to open up open up things, and the depth of the conversations that we have really goes deep. And so that's, for me, that's the lady trust me, and because of that, I guess they trust the guy also, because the conversations start to get really deep and really personal. And it's easy for me, once again, that ice is broken. It's so easy for me to open up and share my personal story. It's
Wow. I imagine I'm sure your business card says leadership coach, but maybe it should say relationship deepener, and you should have a cape instead of a business card. That's phenomenal. And think about the application. Okay, you could start a dating service, but also think about what that looks like. Have you had similar experiences like that, maybe in a professional setting where you were a conduit, or somehow your ability to deepen a relationship helped other people's relationships go deeper?
in the workplace, I have not done that. I have not been a third wheel. Yeah, but that's actually a good insight. Yeah, no, mostly been in relationships.
That could, Ryan. I mean, it's just we're thinking about that. Oftentimes in business, we're trying to put two partners together, or we're trying to put two companies together, or we're trying to introduce a vendor relationship. And there could be in this world of leadership and in management, there could be and should be this place for people to help make relationships happen. And yeah, we're joking in the chat room about it being dating, but this goes on in the business world and in leadership. And I think even inside companies, it's about making divisions or departments or groups work together, right? And finding those commonalities in the groups and helping those teams come together, not just because they have to work together, but finding those emotional connections that help those teams naturally work together. I think there could be some good, when we think about coaching, there could be some good places there. Hey, before we run out of time, there's a couple questions in the chat room I want to cover and make sure we get. So one is they're asking, how does your maximizer and relator work together? How do you, can I have that same thing in myself, but how do you see your maximizer and relator? How do those act together?
My maximizer, well, I think in terms of, this is actually what's written in my insight report, and so it's something that sticks with me, is that I love to work with people and understand what made them successful. So there is an individualization part there, but what's great there is I learn from people the best practices that they do. So that's kind of how it helps me. So because I don't want to learn on my own. I just want to, hey, I already have these successful people in my circle. Why not understand, what they do to make them successful? What are their best practices? What are their routines? And then learn from it. So that's one thing that I do. I can't think of anything else at this time.
Yeah. Do you think there's also a quality component, right, to maximizer in making things better? And I think we're touching on the fringes of this, but without saying it's maximizer. But when we're putting disparate teams together, or when we're making relationships happen outside of ourselves, right? There can be and could be a maximizer component built into that to get quality in the relationships, right? How do we get disparate organizations, disparate groups, and pull those together in a way that creates an emotional bond so they can work well together? And how does that become a quality, right? How does that done in a quality component? I think there can be those. So does that make sense? How do you respond to that a little bit?
Yeah. That kind of triggered something that I just realized. I thought about this way back. that as a relator, so sometimes it shows up in a basement behavior, in that I try to help people even though they didn't really ask for it, because I feel like, hey, this would make you so much better. All right. So it's kind of like sometimes I get into their business. And so I become more intentional about that, hey, Ryan, if they're not asking for your help, maybe they don't want it at that point. They're not ready for it. But that has shown up a lot, and it has in the past been a sore point in some of my relationships and some of my friendships, because I do, they oftentimes, I mean, sometimes there've been a lot that I've been wrong too, but oftentimes they do come back later on and tell me, you were right, Ryan, but I'm not ready for it. But because, for me, I'm just, hey, we have an open relationship. I'm going to tell you this, even if it hurts you, because this will make you great.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you this. You summarized it right there. I'm going to tell you because this is going to make you great. And I think that's a great, as we kind of sum up those two together for you, I think that summarizes it pretty well. It comes out of a really genuine heart, right? It comes out of a really genuine interest to make them better. But I have learned as I've gotten older, sometimes I need to ask, like, I have an opinion. Do you want to hear it? Like, I want to get permission. And so I think that's one of those areas for us that maybe struggle in that area. If we're getting people saying to us, well, we really wasn't interested. Let's ask for that permission first, right? Let's just say, hey, I have an idea. Are you interested? And that's good. Maika, I want to throw it back to you really quick, because Leah had a question about, and Ryan, I want you to think about this. When you have two relators, and the circles aren't combining, they want them to. One considers number two in their circle, but number two doesn't consider number one in their circle, and that conflict that maybe exists. Lee, I hope I'm getting this kind of right in the question. That conflict that kind of exists there. Maika, I want to throw that to you as an expert and say,
Great.
What do you think?
Throw it to me. Let's just say what you mean. Clicks. Is that what we're talking about?
I think it is. Yes. I think that's, well, we can add that in as well too.
I want to know from Ryan, I'm eventually going to throw it back to him, but I think about times where I've actually worked with boards or groups of leaders who have a lot of relator, and their instant reaction is to look at it and be surprised. And when they're surprised, I like to dig a little bit further, say, okay, what surprises you? And I've heard several times, well, I'm surprised we all have so much relator because we're not that close to each other. And maybe that's sort of what we're talking about, is there's a lot of relator talent, but those circles don't necessarily overlap. Maybe you're relating to different circles. So I think in my situation, what we've had to do is talk about it and realize that relator is a bend toward emotional honesty. And that there is some desire there to have those relationships, but only if they're genuine. So if it's something that you want to address, I think you've got to be able to address it head on with relators. You can't skirt around it. You can't you can't halfway do it. So I think you've got to commit to all those relators agreeing that they want each other in their inner circle. And if they don't, I think you've also got to agree to, how can we work together without being each other's best friend, or where can we work together, and maybe talk more about the partnership that we can offer each other. I've heard plenty of relators say, you know what, I don't have to host you in my house for a glass of wine in order to be productive together. And I think that for me, working with relators, that emotional honesty, the ability to say it and to deal with it head on has been pretty important. But I don't know. It's a huge question there. Ryan, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, that's also, I guess there will be times that people just don't click. This is my circle, that's your circle, and there's just something that we can't agree on, and you can't really pinpoint it at some point. You just can't put it's not tangible, right? But yeah, I like what you said, that you just have to find a way to work together if you have to, but otherwise it's okay to walk away from that. I think for me, mine is kind of different, because I do have that includer and I try to include them. But there will be times that I will really just see it that they don't want to be included. They don't want to be part of that. And I have to be aware of that and just accept that. that I can't bring everybody in. As much as I open up, if they're really that close, I have to understand that not everybody will allow me in, and that's okay.
Yeah. I'm curious about this theme of permanence with Relator, Ryan. And I think this goes back to Leela's question originally. What happens when trust is broken? You could probably go a little bit further with that and say, with those people who are in your inner circle, it sounds like it takes a lot of time, a lot of shared emotion, a lot of shared trust, for lack of a better word, in order to get there. So with that idea of Relator being about longevity, about depth of relationship, do relationships ever break for you? And what happens if they do?
Yeah, they do. So I actually have another story there. So I have a very good friend. I had a very good friend. I played basketball with him all for how many years, and just one day I found out that he was mad at me for something I did on the basketball court, and he just stopped talking to me. And that, for me, that's something that's really hard for my relator to take in, because I invested a lot of time there. I thought there was something, that we were really great friends, right? So I really take that. It hurts. And even until now, I mean, that's like probably more than 6 years ago. And I still think about that guy. It's, it's kind of, my wife told me, why does it bother you so much? If he doesn't, it does bother me. It will always bother me. It's just something that I will learn to live with, but it will bother me every time I have to think about that, because there was that trust there. Now, that story, it's more of the guy just stopped, communicating with me. But if there was trust broken, yeah, in my experience, I guess maybe it comes with maturity, but I've been able to kind of be objective about it. What exactly happened? What are we talking about as far as trust being broken is concerned? If it was something that was not intentional, but something that was they really intended to hurt me, then I'll let them be, right? But if something that was sort of unintentional and it just happened to hurt me, it does take time, but I'm willing to open up and forgive, because again, that relationship, I think, just allows me to get from the past that I've already invested, sort of. There's already that investment anyway.
That's beautiful. It sounds like in mature Relator, emotional honesty wins. That there isn't an on or an off switch, but that it's about, can we? I'm drinking hot water with honey and lemon, and the honey, the label on the honey says raw, unfiltered, and it sort of has been a great. I've been looking at this the whole time, and I've been thinking about it with Relator of, if you're willing to go raw and unfiltered and real and deep, then you forgive when you can. But in order to get there, you've got to go through the raw and unfiltered to understand what you're forgiving and how you're going to rebuild that trust.
Yeah, definitely.
Ryan, I feel like we could talk to you until the hours of your morning, but we do need to wrap. Thank you so much for being thanks for doing your Relator hack with us. I feel like I'm talking to an old friend, because you've been so present on so many of our social media forums and such a great ambassador of strengths. I told you this in our pre-call, but I'll say it again. I love that you're a brilliant example of Relator, but I love that you also serve this role of being just a great example of this global movement to really help people understand talent and strength around the world. So thanks for staying up late for us, and thanks for doing everything that you do.
Thank you for that. And it's anytime. I really love the strengths movement. It's starting to peak here in the Philippines and in Asia in general. So I'm really excited where this will take us.
Yeah, Ryan, you mentioned peaking or growing in the Philippines, and it's on fire there, and we're excited for what's happening out there. Thanks for being a part of the movement. Thanks for coming on the program. I appreciate it. We'll remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strength Center, just gallupstrengthcenter.com. Hey, don't turn this off yet. I know you're tempted because I say the same things every time. Just hold on. We'll send your questions or comments if you'd like to be a guest blogger. We mentioned this earlier in the pre-show. Send us an email. This is really important. Our blog is on fire. That's another thing on fire at the moment. Send us your 400 to 600 words and send it in an email form. Send it to coaching@gallup.com. Put guest blogger in the subject line. That'll make it over to Maika, and we will consider that for our coaches blog. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this program, as well as all the past ones and all of the links to our social resources. A brand new, actually a whole bunch of redesigned stuff going on. Our coaches blog and the resources tab has been redesigned. Head over to coaching.gallup.com and check it all out. If you're interested in becoming a Gallup Certified Strengths Coach, you can see a list of all our courses that lead to that certification. Some that don't, but there's some great courses out there that are available for you. Head out to our courses page, courses.gallup.com. And if you have any questions, you can send us an email as well to that coaching address, coaching@gallup.com. If you found this helpful, and why wouldn't you? We ask that we'd share it, send it around Facebook, Twitter, whatever you do, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever you do. We'd ask that you share it. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and we'll look forward to the next Theme Thursday. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.